Good morning for those in Europe, good afternoon for those in China. This is Martina Gerst, working at the EU SME Center in Beijing. You have joined the EU SME Center webinar series, and today's topic is how to export meat products to China. You might know or you might not know, but the EU SME Center here in Beijing is a project funded by the EU Commission, and we are assisting European SMEs of the 28 member states to either export to China or to settle down. So this project is implemented by a consortium of 6 partners, you can see here, and it has been established in October 2010 and will run until July 2018. Here you can see the panel on the left side, and we would like to ask you, if you have questions, please put them into what you can see here now is the red square. We will try to reply to your questions during the whole session. If not, then we will email you the answer if you have registered your company on our website. The webinar is in total scheduled for about an hour. So we may speak for about, I would say, 45 minutes in total. Our today's speaker, I'm very proud, is Jordi Baquet. He is an international trade consultant, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises. He worked for quite a while as a director for the international department in Girona Chamber of Commerce in Spain. He is a member of the China Experts Network of Understanding China, this famous EU program. And he was responsible for the Agro-Food China meeting point, helping enterprises to get export-oriented information to further develop the agro-food sector in China. We are working with him since 2013, and we already had a couple of webinars. Jordi not only supports us with webinars, but only does presentations in Europe for us regarding the agro-food sector. And this is where I would like to hand over now to Jordi, who will tell you about today's program. Jordi, do you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Good morning. Thank you, Martina, for your introduction, and thank you all for attending the webinar today. In the next 40 minutes, we'll try to answer some of the most common questions that come up among exporters considering entering the Chinese meat market. I'm thinking about questions such as, am I allowed to export meat products to China? What kind of products? What are the basic requirements for importing meat in China? What documents will I need for any particular export, or how to get my products through customs? These questions and the answers will make the core of our presentation today. Of course, there are other aspects related to meat exports that are relevant to any potential exporter. If you are building a strategy, you will need to know how to market your products, how to find the right partner, or to know if e-commerce is a good way to sell meat products in China. I would say these last questions have been answered by in previous guidelines and webinars that are all available through the EU SME Center website. So I highly recommend you to go to them to check the information, that it's a valuable information that can, I'm sure, help you to better understand what we will say today. In fact, this same webinar is intended as a complement to the guidelines that keeps the same title and that has been recently updated. In the guidelines, you will find, apart from the main links to the resources we'll explain today, I think it's important for you because you will have information on your own country's status. It means that if your country is one of the 14 countries that have been approved for export to China, then there you can check the information on your own food safety authority, the protocol signed by EU countries, as well as other useful links that will help you to get your approval or eventually apply for an export health certificate. We'll go over these 4 main points here from point number 1, which is about some figures about the meat market in China. Then we'll go to the basic laws and regulations, and especially protocols and establishment registrations. We'll follow with the main procedures and how to get your products through customs, and finally some challenges and recommendations for SMEs. You will see as well that in number 5, in gray letters, you have some annexes that try to complement the information we'll give today. So you have some data, detailed information and breakdown of imports by category of products, by countries of origin, and even the evolution of imports in the last 5 years. You have as well laws and standards, a complete list of laws and standards, emphasizing labeling and packaging conditions. Some examples of the documents we'll explain today, and finally useful links to the meat market in China. So we'll start now with point number 1. According to the Harmonized System Code, we made this classification of the products included in this presentation. We made these 2 big categories. The first one is for unprocessed meat, either chilled, frozen, or fresh, and edible offal. This, in fact, represents the vast majority of products exported by the European Union to China. Below the line, you have products that are included in the category of processed meat and processed meat products, like cure and cooked ham or sausages, for instance. So after this, I think there's a poll to just know something about your profile, a little about your profile. I think Martina has already prepared this poll.
Yeah, wait a second. We will launch. Yeah, we will launch now a poll question. You can see, which means what kind of meat products do you intend to export to China? And we would be happy if you could just answer quickly, and then we will have a look. Okay. I see. So, okay, I would say now we have quite 80%. I will close the poll now. Okay, Jordi, for you, do you have an idea what is number 1?
Yeah, of course. I think this profile corresponds to the reality of the products exported by the European Union. You have 2 main things to say about this policy. The meat processed products account here for, let's say, I think 60%.
Yeah, more than 60%.
The idea that I think we'll talk about it later in the challenges in point number 4 is that SMEs are more present in the segment of processed meat than in the segment of slaughtering and packing meat. So it's normal that you have here this 62% of SMEs companies that are interested in meat processed products. On the other hand, pork meat is in fact the main product exported by the European Union, so it's a big concentration in this segment. So it's normal that you have these averages. And for lamb and beef, I think this is a real potential for beef and lamb as far as new protocols are developed in the coming months or years. So I think we can go on with with the steps.
Okay, let's close this now. So yeah, Jordi, so we will be now keen on hearing a bit about what is the market for meat in China.
Yes, just the main figures, because we don't want to bother you with lots of numbers here, but just to know that in 2014, China imported meat products and processed meat products for a value of $6 billion US. That represented around probably 10% of all food imported by China. I can say as well that in the last 5 years, imports of meat products have increased around 150%. So there is indeed an increasing and a very, very agile market, and I think it's important for any exporter to see it as a potential for an outlet for their products. What kind of products are means or selling in China? You see that an overwhelming majority of the products are food, meat, unprocessed meat, and edible offal. It represented more than 99% of all products exported by the world to China, and less than 0.5% were processed meat and processed meat products. For the European Union, we keep the same pattern. So more than 98% of products were unprocessed meat and edible offal. But in this case, as we said, we saw in the poll, exports are highly concentrated in one single category of products. It's pork meat. And finally, as you probably know, pork meat is the biggest meat market in China, not only in terms of production, but in consumption as well. So you see that 60% of the countries in tech correspond to meat products, pork meat products, followed by poultry 20%, and beef and lamb 3%. I have to say that these two last categories, beef and lamb, have experienced an increasing demand over the last years, coming mainly from high and middle income consumers from urban areas in China. In the next slide, you will have a picture of the global meat trade, meat imports in China. So you will see, I'm afraid there's some...
Is it not? We see it already
perfect.
here.
Okay, perfect. So you just have here a picture of the global meat import flows in China. The idea here is that since China applies a selective import system based in one-by-one negotiation with potential partners, then only 24 countries so far have been allowed to export to China. So there's a big concentration of exports in a few hands, we can say. You see here the arrows that represent the flows of exports from the world into China, and why the arrows meaning more flow. You see that there is a certain, let's say, international trade division by the category of products exported to China. For instance, Australia, New Zealand, together with Uruguay and Argentina, are the main exporters of beef and lamb meat. Brazil is the first supplier of poultry meat, followed by the United States, and finally the European Union is the main supplier of pork meat, followed closely again by the United States. So if you go to the data available in the annexes, you will see that not more than 10 countries are accounting for more than 80% of all global meat exports to China. So after these figures, we can go now to we start with a regulatory framework. Regulations on meat import-export in China have been developed according to the provisions of the Food Safety Law. The Food Safety Law was approved and came into force in 2009. I'm sure we'll have a bit time to talk about it later when in the challenges and recommendations for SMEs. But here we want to outline 6 basic concepts derived from the Food Safety Law that are relevant for any meat exporter. We'll give you just a brief description and we'll go over it again. First, a protocol. A protocol is an agreement between China and any single country wishing to export meat products to China. The protocol will contain different provisions, but the basic thing here is that the protocol will cover a specific range of meat products that will be allowed for export to China. A second point here is the foreign establishment registration. So any foreign producer has to be compulsory registered at ACSIQ. ACSIQ is the General Administration of Quality, Supervision, Inspection and Quarantine, responsible for implementing all food safety-related measures, and is done through CNCA, which is the technical body responsible for inspecting foreign establishments. We'll talk about it, which is one of the main points in our presentation. A third concept here is the filing management system. It means any company doing international trade of meat products with China needs to be registered or put on records at ACSIQ through this online system, the filing management system. In the next slide, we'll see the three remaining concepts. We'll talk about import designated points, as it happens in the European Union with meat coming from third countries. Only ports that have a CIQ inspection and quarantine service are authorized to import meat products coming from third countries. So at this time, 43 airports, are even recently, and online customs have been authorized for importing incoming meat. Another point is that the CIQ officers are responsible for inspection and quarantine of all imported meat. So this physical inspection will result in a certificate released to importers. This certificate will allow them to complete customs clearance and to release the product in the market. And finally, as a way to ensure traceability, all importers should keep a record of imported products for at least 2 years. The idea is that with this system, you'll make sure that the products reaching the final consumer are perfectly in good conditions and safety and quality standards. In the next slide, it comes the first question: who's allowed to export meat products to China? This basic question introduces us the concept of eligibility. The idea is quite simple. If you want to export meat products to China, you first need to make sure that your country has been made eligible through a protocol for this particular category of products you intend to export. And the second point, once the country has been made eligible, you should apply for your own eligibility through establishment registration, as we will see now. So in the next slide, we'll talk about the protocol negotiation process, how everything starts. Well, when a country wants to export a certain range of products to China, it will submit a formal request to the Chinese authorities, together with documentation on the SPS, sanitary and phytosanitary system. It means basically the way the country is managing certification and inspection of meat products. The Chinese authorities will carry out the analysis and risk evaluation of the exporting country. So it will make sure that the documents sent to the Chinese authorities are compliant with Chinese laws and regulations, and at the same time there is no outbreak that could prevent exports from this particular category of products. After that, China will send a delegation of experts to fulfill further in-situ investigations. That when these experts, these veterinarian and other experts, will evaluate the effectiveness of the official inspection and certification system. So they want to make sure that the system of the exporting country is aligned with the one in China. So its responsibility on inspecting meat leaving the country can be transferred to veterinarians and people responsible of inspecting products in the living or the exporting country. And finally, if everything is compliant, both countries will start a bilateral negotiation, an expert negotiation that will set up the terms, the provisions of the protocol. Among them, and as a, let's say, a seal of the agreement, there will be an export health certificate that will be the physical proof that meat leaving the country is perfectly compliant with Chinese laws and regulations. In the next slide, we'll see what are the basic or the standard content of any protocol. You see, if you have the possibility of checking the protocols available online. Some countries have made them public, others not. So, but if you go to the guidelines, you have links to protocols available. So you can see that most of them keep standard content. What are the most common provisions? They will start with talking about management regulations. Again, the way the country is conducting inspection and certification of meat products. A second point is to make sure that there is no outbreak that could prevent the products from being exported. A third point is to ensure traceability. Traceability is to make sure that all meat leaving the country comes from animals born, raised, and processed within approved facilities in the country. A fourth point is the registration of exporting facilities. Again, all producers of meat products need to be registered with AXIC before starting operating in China. Another point is to identify the veterinarians responsible for signing the export health certificates and the specific task on that point. And regarding protocols regarding standards, you will see that a detailed information on packaging, labeling, mark, transport, storage, and manipulation conditions. For instance, temperature for frozen or stored meat. There will be the actual shape of the export health certificate, so we will find a sample of the certificate you will need to use for any export to China. And finally, a provision regarding the exchange of communication between China and the exporting country in case of any outbreak that will mean to stop immediately on all exports and the way to resume them as soon as the outbreak has been eradicated. In the next slide, you will see we'll try to gather all the information regarding existing protocols in the EU countries. So this map I think can be useful, first because it's a Google map that can be updated constantly. So we'll try to keep everything up to date. If you click on the map, you will see the full information. You see here there are two kinds of markers, the green and pink spots. If you click on any of the green spots, you will find information on the existing protocols, the products included in the protocols, and as well the number of companies that or of establishments that have been already registered. You will have as well a link to the AXIC website where you can check even the names of the companies that have been approved so far. So while if there is a pink mark here, pink marks mean protocols that even if they have been agreed and signed, still no companies have been registered because the protocol has been signed recently or because companies have experienced and are facing difficulties in getting approved. So from this point, I think there is a second poll that Martina wants to insert.
Yes, Thordy, thank you very much. So I will launch now our second poll question, which basically asks about who should I contact if I would like to start registering my company to be eligible for exporting to China. Here we go. The poll is open. I see today we have a very active audience, very interested in meat export to China. It's very good. Okay, so I will close this now. Hordi, do you see the results? Any comment on this?
Yeah. So the answer number 4 is the right one. So most of you know already the way to start getting your approval. It's true that AXIC plays a main role here, but since there is an agreement, a protocol between your country and AXIC or the Chinese authorities, then your country is allowed to start the process of getting your company registered. It's true, but the final agreement will be assigned by AXIC through CNCA. But it's true that you have to start everything through your own local food safety authority. So it will just explain this now.
Okay, so then I would say we continue with the establishment registration. I do hope you see everything.
Perfect. Yes.
Yes.
So
okay.
your country has been made eligible through a protocol. Now let's go to the second step. You want to be approved for exporting to China. So everything starts by sending a written formal application to your local food authorities, as we said before, so that you will send a template, you'll fill in, and you will send some documentation joined to this template. And your local food authorities will be at any time of great help for reaching your goal here of getting approved. Of course, there's advantage of your local food authorities, since there's a long experience already. The first protocols were signed in 2000, so these days already know how to deal with Chinese inspectors for getting approved. Then your local food authority will be helping you at any time in the whole process. Your authorities will do let's say a formal checking, will check if documents are compliant and will be accepted by Chinese authorities, and at the same time they will send these documents together with a list of pre-selected establishments to CNCA. As we said, is a technical body responsible for inspecting foreign establishments. CNCA experts committee will evaluate the eligibility of establishments and will decide whether to send a delegation to inspect on the spot those establishments. So the first thing they will do is to communicate to your own authorities that the name of the products, the facilities to be inspected, and the date of this inspection. So you will receive a delegation in your premises. This delegation will consist of several Chinese inspectors together with people from your own food safety authority. What they will do, well, they will just check different items in your management system. They will check if your production flow chart is compliant with laws and regulations included in protocols. They will check that there is no cross-contamination due to mixing up of different products, that the equipment and materials in contact with meat are kept clean in sanitary conditions. You have a microbiological program, the temperature of rooms for processing meat and stored products, etc. So all these items will be monitored and inspected by Chinese officials and veterinarians, and finally, if everything is compliant, will be assigned a registration number that you will use in any future export to China. And as a final and formal approval, your company will be listed on AXIC's website. So in the next slide, as we have completed these two first steps, so your country has been made eligible, your establishment is approved, then you want to start exporting to China. And the question here is there any other requirement regarding exports? But first, just a few comments about establishment registration. You forgot one slide, sorry. I have to say that we are always talking about establishment and not company. Why? Because establishment refers to any facility that is involved in the meat production flow. It means any slaughterhouse, cutting plant, meat processing plant, or cold store wishing or wanting to export their products to China needs to be approved and has to be assigned a serial number by AXIC. So if you are, for instance, in the segment of the final food processor, so you're manufacturing final products, processed products, then you're likely to buy inputs from outside facilities. Then you must be sure that you only buy products from approved facilities. When AXIC will approve any manufacturer of final products he will require a correspondence table, as the one you see here in the example. In this correspondence table that we published together with the name of the company in AXIC's website, you will have to identify all the facilities, so establishments that are involved in any particular production of meat that is addressed to the Chinese market. So if you check the list of companies approved, you will see that some companies have several establishments approved, either because those companies are dealing with different segments of the meat production system, or because they have facilities scattered in different geographical areas within the same country. To say as well that as a general rule, establishment is valid for 4 years, even that the AXIC and CNCA prove certain flexibility for companies that have a good record in their exports to China. And finally, if you have been approved for a certain range of products included in one single protocol, and you want to extend that agreement to further products, then you're likely to be inspected again. So, for instance, in a protocol for pork meat products, you have been approved for different cuts, and you want to extend this approval to, let's say, trotters, for instance, or pork meat feet, then you will probably need a second inspection. And now, yes, now we'll go to the third point. After your approval has been completed and your country has been made eligible, then just to make sure that there is no further requirement to start your exports. As we said at the beginning, apart from your establishment approval, you will need to register online through the filing management system if you intend to export your products. This filing management system applies to any exporter, importer, or agent dealing with meat trade. And the system works is an online system, so you can apply online from home. Once you enter the website, they will ask you to fill in a template that will include information on your own country and your own company and your partner in China. In the next slide, we'll just have a quick look at the main requirements for any meat importer in China. I would say here that Saint-Germain, the first objective in China is to find a good importer or a good agent, somebody who knows the market, who has good network sales, that has good connections with the government officials and customs officials. Then you will conduct a due diligence to make sure that you are dealing with the right partner. So if you do this procedure, and here I suggest you to go to the guidelines that has been published by the USME Center that gives you the clues how to conduct this due diligence properly. Then once you make sure that your partner is the right one, he will have of pressure fulfill all requirements for becoming an importer. So just to keep you in mind, he will need a business license, an import-export license allowing him for international trade. He will need to be registered with customs in China to be allowed to conduct import clearance. And again, he will need to be registered online with the filing management system and with the CIQ, the Chinese Inspection and Quarantine Bureau, where he intends to operate. In the next slide, so we have perfectly completed all the requirements for becoming an exporter. Then you start your exports. What will I need to obtain? What documents I will need to obtain for customs clearance? Here you have some of the most common documents in international trade. So you talk about the trade contract, an invoice, a packing list, a bill of lading, a certificate of origin that will be delivered by your Chamber of Commerce. All those documents are familiar. I'm sure you're familiar with them because they are common in international trade. And according to the protocol, you will need to apply for an export health certificate. This will be normally done online, so there will be an electronic system that will allow you to apply. And once the certificate is issued by your own authority, then the same authority will send a pre-notification to ACSIC, including or containing all information, all data regarding your shipment. So, and including the terms of the export health certificate. In the next slide, you see we try to summarize this scheme with the basic steps to get your products through customs. You are the blue spot, you have already gathered your trade contract, the invoice, the bill of lading, packing list. You have your own certificate of origin. You apply for the export health certificate. Your food safety authority have sent a communication to ACSIC with a pre-notification in advance to the arrival of the shipment. And then you will gather all those documents, send them to your importer. The importer, apart from fulfilling all requirements mentioned in the previous slide, will need a permit from ACSIC to proceed to inspection and quarantine. When any specific shipment arrives in China, he will need to apply in advance, let's say 3-4 days in advance, to make sure that ACSIC is prepared for inspecting the arrival containers of batches. So your shipment will arrive in China, will be stored in a warehouse, authorized warehouse, waiting for ACSIC's inspection. If inspection is compliant, your products are compliant with laws and regulations included in the protocols, then you will be delivered a quarantine certificate for inbound commodities that will allow importer to proceed and to complete customs clearance. And finally, the product will be delivered in the market. What happens if there is some kind of non-compliance? But before seeing this point, I think there is a third and last poll that we will insert here.
Yes, Hordi, thank you very much for reminding me. I will launch now the third and last poll question, which is about are all meat products entering China subject to CIQ inspection and the quarantine formalities? So please, could you vote on the answers we have put in? So if the answer is only if there is a declared disease in the country of origin, that's the first one. The next one is yes in all cases. The third one is only if my company is not registered with AQSIQ, or only if some incident has been reported in previous imports. So let's see. Our audience is as already very quick, I think. I can close this now. Let's go and share the results. Okay. So, Hordi, any comment on this?
Yes, the audience is really expert in the field, in this field of meat imports. It's true that in all cases, I mean, it's not related to any declared disease. A declared disease can be the cause of needing more documents in the exports, or being registered with ACSIC is a previous requirement. So your products will never be dispatched only unless you're registered with ACSIC before you send your first shipment. So this is true in all cases, is necessary and is compulsory requirement to get your product inspected by ACSIC. So now we'll explain.
Yeah. Okay.
Results. What happens if there is some non-compliance when entering your product in China? You will see in the next slide, you have this green light, meaning that your product is perfectly compliant. Then you will be allowed to complete import clearance, and your product will be released in the market. If there is some non-compliance, if this non-compliance is a major non-compliance, it means that it's related to safety or environmental issues, then your product will be automatically rejected or destroyed. This is the first possibility. The second one is that your this compliance is or non-compliance is the main non-compliance, so it's not affecting, let's say, basic laws and regulations in China. For instance, you have some inadequate labeling. At this point, you will be allowed to do a correction under AXIC supervision, and after correcting this non-conformity, you will be allowed through a second inspection, and probably it will be released the final quarantine certificate to proceed to customs and finally selling the product in the market. So I have to say as well that in case of repeated violation of the food safety law, and according to the implementation rules of bad records administration that came into force last year, the CIQ officers will inform the AXIC administration on companies that have violated these food regulations, and the companies, either importer or exporters, will be put on records. If you are put on bad records, then it means that further exports will be submitted to more strict controls, audits, and laboratory tests, meaning, of course, more time, more cost, and finally your image being damaged among Chinese officials and importers. So in the next slide, we have here some data that has been elaborated by AXIC. Is according to AXIC White Book 2014. That year, 3,503 batches of imported food were found non-compliant. And what were the main reasons for rejection? In 41% of the cases, the reasons alleged by AXIC officials were these safety and environmental issues, or major issues. Basically, microbiological contamination, the use of non-authorized additives. The case of ractopamine is common, especially among US exports, and finally, excessive pollutants. Minor non-compliances were the cause of 46% of food rejected. Basically, substandard quality, inadequate labeling, and invalid certificates were the main cause of these non-conformities. In the next slide, once everything is compliant, you know, your country has been made eligible, your establishment has been approved, you know the requirements, you know how to get your products through customs. We'll get to the next slide. We'll talk a bit about the main challenges for SMEs trying to export meat products to China. The first thing is that, as we said, China applies a selective imports or system that allows so far only 24 countries to export their products to China. And there is a permanent competition among them. So in this sense, you don't have, as being member of the European Union, any particular advantage. We cannot, EU members don't share a common policy regarding meat exports to China. Agreements are done based on one-by-one negotiation, and of course there is a common policy regarding customs procedures. Any meat coming from any European country will be submitted to the same duties and taxes regardless of its country of origin. But nevertheless, this competition is strong among any company and all countries that have been allowed so far. Another point is that the European Union exports are highly concentrated in one single sector, which is the pork meat subsector. And as we said before, the pork meat sector is the biggest, a strategic sector in China. So you can see that government is doing occasional intervention in market prices in order to stabilize prices and to foster internal production. This is one external factor that can affect your exports occasionally. it's true as well that our main competitor in the pork meat market in China, the United States, are exempt. Companies in the United States are exempt from plant-by-plant registration, so all approved facilities are allowed to export to China unless they are put on bad records. And there is an interesting thing as well in terms of global sourcing strategy in China, is that big Chinese companies are being noticed more and more in the last years because the investments and taking over of key establishments in Western countries. As in the case of Shuanghui International that took over Smithfield, one of the giants of the pork meat industry in the United States, and this same company having shareholder connections with other companies in Europe, like Campo Frio in Spain. So there is, we can say there is a strategy of taking control on key strategic facilities that can supply quality and safety meat to China. Not surprisingly, the first approved establishment in Romania has been Smithfield, Romania. A third point here that's a key point is the issue of lack of enforcement of the food safety law. This is a complex issue involving many factors. Here we try to outline those that have a major impact in imports of meat products. So you have that these inadequate standards, sometimes standards that are not aligned with those prevailing internationally based on Codex Alimentarius. These overlapping and scattering of responsibilities among different government levels, the lack of transparency in inspection and verification lead to some, quite often becomes a burden for EU exporters. In the next slide, I'm talking about SMEs challenges. We'll see that, of course, any SME wishing to export meat products to China need to evaluate carefully the investment required for becoming an approved establishment and what's the expected return from its sales to China. Here we are talking of, in terms of economic costs, but as well as time consuming, because getting approved means not only months, in many cases several years, especially if you fail a first inspection and you need to go to a second one. So we are talking here about unpredictable time frames. Another point that I think has been, we have seen in the first poll is that so far there is a real small presence of SMEs among the approved establishments. If you check the list of companies that have been approved, and you have occasion to check the profiles, you will see that most of the companies approved are large companies. But this, in fact, reflects a reality in the European meat sector, is that, especially in the segment of meat slaughtering and packing, even there is a big number of SMEs participating on that activity. A small number of large companies have a dominant position in the market, and this situation has been translated at the moment when the first approvals started. So you see that most of the companies approved are these large companies. But I think there is a positive message here, since there is an increased number of protocols that have been negotiated lately and that will probably be negotiated in the coming months and years. And those protocols are trying to meet increasing opportunities in the Chinese market, not only because there is a growing demand of alternative kinds of meat like beef or lamb. The exporters are trying to export products with higher value, so we can move from the traditional cuts that have a higher demand in China. We talk about the fifth quarter, heads, shoulders, tails, offal, to other kinds of cuts that can have a potential demand among new consumers in China, bone-in loins or picnic roast, spare ribs, and why not organic meat as well. And as we have been experiencing these last years, processed products, cured and cooked ham and sausages, are having an increasing demand in China. So there's the potential for those products. And as SMEs are more present in this segment of processed meat products, then there are more opportunities, I'm sure, for SMEs to compete on price and variety in the Chinese market in the short and medium term. Final recommendations, this will apply to any company wishing to export to China. Before choosing your partner, you should conduct a due diligence to make sure you're choosing the right one. Because your partner will be your permanent connection with the country. He will know anything that is changing in the Chinese market. The Chinese market is a very volatile market. Everything is evolving very quickly, so it's important for you to make the right choice. Routing helps. It's true that the first export will be the most difficult one. Once your import channel proves to be working, we say here, stick to it. It means once you have overcome these difficulties in the first exports and your product is noticed, you export regularly, then everything will run smoother for you. For the first export, documentary checking needs to be done not once but twice. Remember that keeping a good profile means more facilities for your company to export to China, while being on bad records or means slowdown of exports, more costly exports, and finally your image again being damaged and having more difficulties in consolidating your position in China. And finally, and it applies not only to meat exporters but to any company and to any country, I would say probably, you're permanently vulnerable to unexpected changes in rules and bilateral discrepancies. No need to talk about what is happening with the meat market in Russia right now, but we gave some examples in our guidelines of these cases when, because some, let's say, futile discrepancies among formal documents have caused shipments to be stopped in any particular Chinese port. So this is the main content of our presentation. We have, as we said before, some annexes here. If you want you have time, you want to check them, you will find more detailed data on imports. You have some laws and standards, and we emphasize the packaging and labeling requirements. You have some samples on documents that we have explained, some protocols and export health certificates, and finally useful links to the Chinese meat market. I think that's all from me, and well, of course we are ready to answer any question that you want to inquire either to me or I think through the channel.
Yes, through me to you. Thank you very much, Jordi, for this interesting presentation. And yeah, I have a couple of questions here, and I would like to start with probably an easy or not an easy one, but I mean, in your challenging, in one of the challenges slides, you said that the approval can be like lead to unpredictable timeframes, and this brings us to one of our questions here. Somebody asks that what is like an average overall time span for the approval if, let's say, everything goes right?
I would say from the moment the protocol is signed until the moment the first company is approved, it can, I think, probably 2 years is the average time.
Okay.
But it depends on every country has a different, let's say, policy and here experience accounts. I mean, if countries that start signing protocols in the year 2000, and have gained experience in dealing with the Chinese administration, they are likely to facilitate exports of and approval of their own companies, and everything will be probably smoother, will get smoother. But for countries that's the first protocol, it proves to be more difficult. I keep in mind the case of Hungary that needed at least 3 years to get the first establishment approved.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's an outbreak of avian influenza in Hungary. Exports have been stopped recently.
Okay. Usually time is always an issue, and you have a reply to this. Another one is there any, or what about cost involved in the establishment registration? Somebody asks here. For example, does the company or the establishment who would like to register, do they have, for example, to cover the cost of the CNCA inspectors coming to do the overseas inspection?
Yes, it will depend on the country. Normally, you will have to pay for the cost of inspection. It will normally share this cost with the other establishments that will be registered during the same visit. In other countries, there is some kind of subsidy for companies that need to be registered. It depends on different countries.
Okay.
In some countries as well, you will have, let's say, a training previous to the inspection time arriving to your facilities in order you to make sure everything is compliant. So it changes from country to country.
Okay.
But it's true that anyway, some costs will have to be assumed by your company.
Okay, but there are maybe subsidies available where you have to ask in your own country.
There are countries that have subsidies available, and you can just check again through our guidelines. You can check the link to your own food safety authority, and then you can start just looking for the content.
Another interesting question here we got is how is the process if you are an agent and so you represent a company and you would like that this company gets like the certified or the registration number? Is the process any different, or any recommendations on that?
No, the process is not different, but requirements are the same. So here we have to make the difference between who is producing the product and who is selling the product. So if you are the producer but you don't intend to export the product directly, let's say, then the establishment registration will be always a compulsory need. But if you are a company dealing with meat products, you will need to register through the filing management system, and you can only export products that come from approved facilities. So registration is compulsory for any company that is producing products addressed to the Chinese market. And if you are not the exporter, you do it through an agent. This agent, again, has to be registered through the filing management system, but he can only sell products coming from approved facilities.
Okay, I see. Another question is, why is it not possible to export beef from Spain? And is there any negotiation ongoing which would allow to export in future? Are you aware of something?
As we said before, beef and lamb are the two, let's say, hot products in terms of new protocols that will probably be negotiated in the short term. As far as I know, there is no actual negotiation between Spain and China regarding beef products. But you know, not all countries are transparent when dealing with these negotiations, because it's some sort of confidential dealing. So in most cases, you know about it when everything is already solved and the agreement is almost completed. So at this precise moment, we know, for instance, that Ireland and the United Kingdom are fostering or trying to accelerate negotiations for becoming approved or being made eligible for exporting beef to China.
Okay.
But as far as I know, it's not the case for Spain.
Okay. So maybe the last question, because we are running out of time. So somebody here says, is it possible to sell processed meat through e-commerce, cross-border transactions without AQSIQ registration? So like, for example, selling like through Amazon?
is not possible. I mean, as we intend to say here is that there is a limited number of companies and countries allowed to export to China. In fact, there are about, at this time, there are about 230 European establishments approved for exporting meat products to China. And these facilities belong probably not less than 100 companies. So there is a limited number of exporters, and only if a protocol includes this specific product, a processed product, let's say a canned meat, preserved, etc. Only the protocol includes this product, you are allowed to export it.
Okay.
So it's true that in these recent months and in the incoming months, we'll probably see more products of this kind to be included in protocols. It comes to my mind the case of France, has recently have seen 3 establishments approved for selling all kinds of, they say, charcuterie or processed products. So everything is evolving quite quickly. Or Denmark has been approved, has been seen some establishments approved for selling sausages. I see that we will, as we said, everything is evolving very quickly, and the main objective for European countries now is to try to get approval for products that are, let's say, further in the production line, so products, more processed products.
But I think we very often get this, like, if I sell it, if I take as a sales channel e-commerce, so is there something different?
Remember that e-commerce is just a sales channel, but it doesn't differ from other channels in terms of requirements. So if you are selling product, once the product reaches the authorized point for importing meat products, it will be submitted to the same requirements. So there is no chance to get the products introduced in China outside the official channel, we can say. So, the requirements will be the same, and especially again, if this product is not included in any protocol, you cannot sell it. So, and this is, I know it's a frequent question, because I'm selling, say, a canned meat, so it's not submitted to the same requirements that a fresh meat. It's true that as you go further into the processing process, you will be likely to get less requirements for getting your facility approved, because as far as you already have a structure, a network of companies approved for selling, let's say, the raw material, the meat, then when you introduce new companies that are buying products from those approved facilities, it can happen that in the, let's say, next protocols, as in the case of France recently, Chinese authorities proved to be, let's say, more flexible when giving the approval to these new companies, because the meat comes from approved establishments, so establishments that have fulfilled all requirements. So since this meat has been is perfectly compliant, then you can think of approving establishments that use that meat for a final processed product, and let's say in more flexible conditions.
Okay.
I think this is another topic. It's a very complex one. Is what we call the pre-registration of establishments. That one of the aims of the European Union when dealing with foreign countries.
I do think we can do this in the next. We can include this in the next webinar. For now, our time is over. Thank you very much, Jordi, for a very interesting webinar on how to export meat products to China. So we have arrived. So we're at the end, basically. Thank you very much to all the participants. The questions we haven't answered, when you have registered, we will answer them. The slides which we have shown plus the annexes will be shown on our website, as well as the recording. As soon as the webinar is finished, there will be a link with a survey displayed, and we would kindly like to ask you if you could just fill it quickly out. It will just take a couple of minutes, not very long. Okay, so thanks a lot for attending. I just want to tell that I think the next webinar on about 23rd of June will be on access to finance for European SMEs in China, and then there is more to come in July. So thank you very much for attending this webinar today, and I say goodbye now from Beijing. Bye bye.